Thank you very much for coming back on Reggae Boys Commentary. I'm Simon Preston. Thank you so much for tuning in to another video on this channel. We have a very special guest with us today, and it's none other than Reggae Girl, now Coach Laura Jackson. Hi, Laura. How are you doing? Hope you and your family are doing well.
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thanks. Doing well, thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming on the show. I really, really appreciate it.
yeah.
A lot of Jamaican fans will remember your debut back in 2019 against Chile. It's amazing how, time has gone by so quickly. Can you imagine 3 years ago?
I know. It makes me feel old.
Yeah, almost on the anniversary of that game. That was February 28th, and now we're just about the end of February. So 3 years. It has gone by so quickly.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to start from your background perspective. Of course, you played for Jamaica, but born in England. Is it your dad's side, your mom's side that's from Jamaica? Which side do you have Jamaican heritage from?
Yeah, my mum's Jamaican. She was born in Jamaica, and her family moved to London when she was 4. So, born in Kingston, Jamaica, and then has spent the most of her life in London.
Okay. And of course, yourself being born in London, would you say that
hmm
you grew up with like a Jamaican culture in a sense with the music, the food, and everything like that?
Yeah, I mean, for people that have been to London, there's a big Caribbean population, specifically Jamaican, and so even though my mum was Jamaican, my dad is English. I had lots of friends that were either Jamaican or half Jamaican. So yeah, big presence in London.
And as far as your journey coming into football is concerned, was it at Arsenal where it started, or were you at a different club before Arsenal?
So I actually started my youth playing career at Enfield Town. And
Mm.
then from Enfield Town, I went to Arsenal, which, fun fact, Becky Spencer, who's now on the team, we played together at the U13 level at
Wow.
Arsenal. So, bit of a crazy connection there. But yeah, went from Enfield Town to Arsenal.
Interesting one because she's now at Tottenham now. You don't see that
Yes,
that divide quite
I know.
often.
And I'm a Tottenham fan too, so
Wow.
hard to put on the Arsenal logo, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's interesting how things worked out. But your time there at the club, of course, a club with a massive history, not only in the men's game, but the women's game as well, growing, developing. Your time there at the club, what was that experience like in your teenage years?
I mean, playing for Arsenal at the time, I mean, I think I joined the club the year that the ladies team won the quadruple. So they won four. I mean, so being a part of that environment and seeing the premier women's club at the time in the world competing, was incredible. Training at Highbury, got to play a game at Highbury, just like being around that top level experience as a youngster definitely kept that fire going for me. So.
Yeah, and then of course the experience took you on to Leyton Orange, another London club, East
Yeah.
London. The experience in at Leyton, what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, a smaller club, but was in the same league as Arsenal, so a bit of a different experience. But it's funny because a lot of those girls I played with are still playing in England now, in what is the Super League. But just as far as the developmental perspective is concerned, like England did a really good job in that Centre of Excellence League. That's what they called it, with Leyton Orient, Chelsea, Arsenal, just to create a good environment for growth and learning.
And then coming into your own now as a senior player at Watford, playing professionally in that sense, what was that experience like, progressing from the academy, the youth team, and now into professional football in a sense?
Yeah, I loved my time at Watford. I mean, as a 16-year-old going in and playing with 25, 30-year-olds, and their path in football was a long one. It just really gave me a true sense of like professionalism. I think at that age, you just, even if you're on the bench, which I was a little bit at the beginning, the learning experience that you get just sitting there and being around those professionals, and then any minute you could get on the field was just like sort of validation that you were doing a good thing. And then progressed, those 2 years playing at Watford and playing and yeah, I mean, great club, loved it.
Yeah, brilliant. I just want to know from your experience at Watford, if from the women's team, if you had a chance to mingle as well with the men's team. They were in the Premier League at the time, and you had a
Mhm.
couple of Jamaican internationals in the first team as well, like Mariappa, Lloyd Doyley. If you had a chance to mingle with the first team and from the men's side as well.
Sadly, no. We did get to go to games, the men's games. I went to a couple men's games. There was one instance where we got to go on the pitch. Um, so they do a much better job now just from like following professional women's soccer. They get to mingle all the time, which I think, especially with those Jamaicans on the team, that would have been a cool experience. But no, didn't get to quite get in there. But
Yeah, that's all right. And for some may view it bizarre, some may say it's compelling, the experience you had going across the Atlantic over to America.
mhm.
Why leave England, where you're playing football, to take up college football? That
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
I think the biggest reason that most people would say who aren't from the US is that you can do both university and play at a high level. And so, when I was in high school, in secondary school, and looking for opportunities to play, whether that was with Watford or with other clubs, it didn't really connect with like the university, the getting the education part. And so, it came to us. There was a few people at Watford, a few of my age, that ended up going to the US, and um, that was the biggest draw. It was like you can come play high level of soccer, a brand of soccer, but then also get your degree. So that was probably the biggest reason.
And of course, you had the exposure of playing not only in England but now in America as well. What
Hmm.
was, some of the differences that you faced, or something that you had to gel into quite quickly in the States? Was it more physical than in England, or what aspects do you had to adapt to
Yeah.
quickly?
I think the athleticism. I mean, the American athleticism is next level. In England, I think we prided ourselves a little bit being technical players, being able to play out of small spaces, and then you go to the US and you've got to chase someone down that's twice the speed of most players on your team. So you get accustomed to that very quickly, seeing that level of athleticism, and then just the load on the body. I think back to my days of playing one game a week, and I come over to the US and playing 2 games a week. That was just, I mean, it's probably similar to what, players play in Champions League these days, but, putting those 2 games on your body every single week was difficult, tough.
Laura, if somebody was to, like, for example, read your CV and like go through the clubs that you might have played for, yeah, Arsenal, Watford, Leyton Orient, and your time at college, they would probably say you adapt to change quite quickly because you go to like a different school every 2 years, like you did in the States. Would you say
Mhm.
that you're that sort of person, or just another opportunity came your way, and that's why you left one environment for another?
I think at the time it was more like taking opportunities, but when I look back on like my experiences playing for all those different clubs, I mean, I learned something from every single coach, every single club, and so I'm thankful. At the time, it's probably a little difficult just to adjust and be moving quite often. But I look back and the experiences, whether it was like playing in certain positions, like even in the US, I went from playing predominantly centre back to Iona playing in defensive mid. So I was able to just become more versatile in that sense. And now being a coach,
Mm.
even before I started coaching, I had seen all these different systems and ways of doing things.
And for you personally, what would you say was your natural position as a player? Centre half, centre mid for
Centre
you?
mid, yeah, love centre mid, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with you there. And 2017, the opportunity that came with coaching at Florida,
Mhm,
was that the first time that you had an opportunity to coach
mhm.
at all?
So I actually, and so when I was at Iona, so in the States, the fall, the autumn is the season, and so in the spring is when we have our off season. And so if you're graduating senior, you're not really part of the team anymore because you're not going to play that next year. So I actually started off helping my team that I just played for, and there was a new coach, and I helped her do a little bit of coaching, and that's when I got into just thinking about, okay, I love the game, I love being involved in it. What can I do to stay in it other than continue, try to continue playing? And so in 2013, I got the opportunity to be a graduate assistant coach, um, right out of undergraduate, and I did that for 4 years. So before I went to FAU, I'd coached for 4 years, so that really helped.
Wow.
Yeah,
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 quite a bulk of experience, especially in your late 20s at that time. Not a lot of people would did, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, looking back, time
I
goes
was
by
like,
quick. And before being an international for the Reggae
Mhm.
Girls, what was the experience like getting the passport, person showing interest to you? What was that story like? Because to this day, girls, and even on the Reggae Boy side, it takes quite a bit of time to get that passport.
Yeah, for me it was quite the experience. So moving to Florida is where I met Hugh, Coach Hugh Menzies, who was the coach of the team at the time. And we had a conversation about, being Jamaican and like playing and joining the team. This was before they qualified for the World Cup. And so then I had to get the steps to go through and try and get everything done. And it was crazy. Like I had to contact my mum. She had to apply for a birth certificate because she had like the old birth certificate
Yeah.
from back in the 50s. And so she had to apply to get her birth certificate from Jamaica, get that sent to England. Then once she got her birth certificate from England, she mailed it to me, posted it to me in America. I then took my details to the embassy in Miami, which I was lucky at that time because I was living like an hour away from the embassy. So I
Mhm.
know some people aren't as lucky, so I could just drive down there. But I think by the time I got all my paperwork in, that was probably like 3, 4, 5 months into it. And then from there, I got my citizenship, and then my passport got lost in the post.
Got lost in the post.
Yeah, so I had to wait even longer. I don't think I got my passport until like December of what before they right after they graduate they
Qualified.
qualified. Yeah. So I finally got it in hand, and then 6 weeks later I was in camp. So
What a story. Treasure to keep it with you because just can you imagine if you had applied for it in England, probably would have been waiting for it today.
oh my goodness, yeah. At least I could physically walk into an office in Miami. That was good. I needed that.
So finally, passport in your hand, 2019. Before you're making your debut for Jamaica, what was that? How did you feel about the atmosphere? You're going through the warm up, loud music blaring, meeting lots of girls in the dressing room before the game against Chile. The whole experience of your debut, in a sense.
I mean, I think one sentence will sum it up. I'd been a part of 100 game plus games at that point as a coach, and then as a player, hundreds of games. And for the last few years, for the last 6 years before I made my debut, I was on the coaching side of things. So I wasn't too nervous. I could hear the fans in the stands, and we had a police escort into the stadium. So I was like, okay, this feels a little bit real. And then Coach Hugh in the locker room, he's like, don't forget you're playing for your country. And that was when I was like, oh my goodness, like this is actually happening. And walking out there and seeing all the fans and the flags. I mean, I was in shock for a little bit. Once you get playing, though, you kind of forget your surroundings. But yeah, I still can remember every single second of that day today.
Yeah. When did you find out that you'd be starting with Marlowe and Chinny in midfield? A few hours before kickoff, the day before?
I think I think it was the day before, and I was pretty shocked. We'd been in training for about a week, and we found out, and I was like, okay, all right.
And of course, the experience in South Africa as well, a different environment, a different experience. And the game against Panama, where we had a record attendance for women's football in the country. So three caps to your name, and we've never lost when you played for Jamaica.
I guess you could say that.
And
Yeah.
of course, the experience now coaching with Kansas.
Mhm.
How has that been compared to your time at Florida as well? Would you see that different administration, different ideas, different philosophy, or
Mhm.
you're allowed to have this sort of, plans that you want to put out and philosophies as a coach?
Yeah. I mean, of similar position being an assistant coach, but definitely a different experience. In the US, there's something called the Power Five, and that's, 65, 64 teams in the US. There's 335 women's football teams in the US. 65 of them are quote unquote Power Five. So that means they have more money, they have better facilities, that kind of thing. So from that perspective, um, my role as an assistant went from coaching, obviously, but dealing with a lot of the administrative stuff to only the football. Only the tactics, working with the other staff members. My life just in the office was 8 hours of, we're on the whiteboard, we're looking, we're talking about what our game model is consisting of. So it's just been, for someone that's a junkie of the game like me, it's incredible experience.
And I think in December of last year, you posted on your Instagram regarding the National B coaching license. How did you feel receiving that qualification and having that to your name?
I was so relieved that the US, it's been my first license I got back in 2013. So my road to the B has been, what year is it? Almost 10 years now. And that was a tough course. That was 6 months. I started it in July or August. And it was a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of assignments, but a week in person, learning and, incredible. I know that they don't just accept anyone to those courses. So felt very blessed to be one to be on the course, and then the learning experience I went through it. We're already implementing a lot of stuff here at Kansas.
Very, very nice. And how would you feel in the future if given that opportunity to coach one of Jamaica's teams, whether the senior team, U17, U20 in the future?
Oh, absolutely. With the previous youth staff, I was involved a little bit through COVID, just because we did a lot of things over Zoom. We met with players and loved that experience, getting to, at least give the girls a little bit of my insights and experience. And, in the future, that's something I'm absolutely aiming for, to be involved with the national team. I mean, I loved every minute of playing. And so just to pass that on and bring my coaching experience, that's the dream.
Wonderful. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you had the opportunity to see our two recent victories quite recently in the qualifying against Bermuda and Grenada. What were your thoughts about the performances and results? And do you still get to catch up with some of the girls that you played with back in 2019?
Yeah, I follow all of them on social media, and every now and again I'll send a message or share a post or something. But I mean, it's incredible. You look at the journey that these players have taken, and how good they have become. I mean, Bermuda and Grenada, no discredit to them whatsoever, but the Jamaica team is so much more experienced. But being in the World Cup in 2019, I think the Bermuda game I counted, there was 9 players that had played in the World Cup, and so. I mean, just the strength, and even watching Bunny when I played with her, I thought she was an incredible player. But just being in the environment that she's in now, and all these players, all the clubs that they play for in Europe and in the US, I think we've got an exciting future ahead for the Reggae girls. So, yeah, those two performances, I think everyone should be excited.
Yeah, and speaking of Bunny, you've seen her mature when you came into the national team when she was in college. Now she's in England. You've obviously played in England, and there's a concern amongst many pundits that she's not putting up the same numbers like she did over in France. Would you say that it takes perhaps a season or two to gel into England before she takes off in a sense?
Yeah, and I think just like when she got onto the stage in France, not that she was unknown, but she hadn't really set her mark as a professional player other than the World Cup, and then went to France and absolutely destroyed everything. And so coming into the English environment where you got some of the best players in the world, I mean, she's in an environment now where she's going to be the best version of herself, because every single game it's against an opponent that knows what she's about, knows that they're going to push her, and it's only going to make her a better player. I mean, the goals and the points and the numbers, that will all come with time, and even if it doesn't, I think that it's just a product of the environment, and I have no worries. I mean, clearly we saw the last 2 games. How many goals did she have? 3 or
Yeah,
4 goals in 2 games.
yeah,
Yeah, so there's no worry with that whatsoever.
And of course, you've seen the injection of players that have come into the squad at the quality. Drew Spence at Chelsea, Jade Bailey, Liverpool, Becky, who you mentioned from Tottenham. I'm not sure if you had a chance to play against some of these girls, but your thoughts about having this experience within the roster now compared to what you came into a couple of years ago, where some girls were in college or some even in the youth team like Jodie Brown.
Yeah, I mean, I think that anytime you can bring professionals into an environment, it's just going to make everyone better. and especially tapping into that market of England, you know, and the US. I know that the US was the major market in which the girls were from for the 2019 World Cup. But like you said, they were still young, 20, you know, 18, 19. Even Jodie wasn't even in college yet, and so, you know, the experience that these girls are playing, like Becky Spencer I talked about, has been playing, you know, in the professional leagues for 12 plus years. You know, to bring that kind of experience into our team, and even some of these college players that are either in college or moving on to the professionals, it's only going to make us better, and it's only going to help the youth in Jamaica and abroad grow and get excited about the Reggae girls.
So there is a possibility that the women's game in Jamaica could resume quite shortly as it relates to the clubs and also the high schools. You know, is there a possibility when it starts back, you could come to Jamaica and have a look at the talent and perhaps recruit one or two for the future?
Yeah, I mean that's always the dream, right? Is to bring some talented Jamaicans over to the US and get them in the college system and play. I know there's a couple in some of the junior leagues, the junior college leagues and the NAIA, that I've even been out traveling this year. I went down to Florida to look at a Jamaican player, and so just the more success that the Reggae girls get, I think the more we'll be able to grow that system, the youth and the club system in Jamaica, and the more we'll either go from, you know, come to the US to play college, or maybe just go on to play professionally. You never know.
All right, and finally from my end as well, Laura, as it relates to, you know, Jamaica and the national team, the next set of games are in April 9 against Cayman and April 12 against the Dominican Republic here in Jamaica. Perhaps we'll see you at one of the games to cheer on the girls.
Oh, I'd love to come down. Any invite out there, I would be there in a second.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Laura, thank you very much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. You know, keep up the good work you're doing. You're making all 3 million Jamaicans, you know, very, very proud, and continue the hard work.
Thank you so much for having me.